Hello and welcome to Learn from the Case. Today I want to focus on the capabilities we have, not on the pathologies that our hardware can present. The use of our neurological system in things that we are not taught to develop, but that are in some percentage active and we use very frequently, even without intending to do so. I particularly want to talk today about telepathy. This ability is not limited to clairvoyants, yogis, or people who practice specific training to develop this or any other ability. We know that most of us have experienced telepathy in our daily lives and it goes unnoticed as a casual thing or funny phenomenon. If you start to observe carefully, you quickly realize, I believe, that it is an innate capacity, but one of those that we do not learn to develop. We do not receive didactic guidance for it. Our mentors are not there to make us develop our potentials as individuals, but to teach us to fit into society and be an effective cog in it. In particular, we are taught to be efficient employees. We are educated to be employees. Some deviate and never work. Some become criminals. And the others have the tupe of take a path toward personal economy development and end up being their own bosses. However, the vast majority will end up being employees. Look around you. But in the current constitution of our society, employees are needed, not bosses. And that is why we are taught to be good employees. We had to be independent, but without exaggerating. We have to be able to walk, feed ourselves, go to the bathroom alone, do a minimum mathematical calculation, and know how to always have a smartphone with us to do other calculation when we are asked to do so. Otherwise, you had to have the phone to watch TikTok, YouTube, Netflix, etc. That is what we are supposed to do all the time. Also, take millions of photos so that the record is always updated. Wink. This, in some societies, spending time on the phone is seen as very bad, but having time alone to be with oneself is also frowned upon. That is a sign of having a bad life or being depressed from all perspectives. And these verbal or implicit postulations end up convincing many. The social contacts that one makes encourage you to go to the student center, to the after work meeting, to the guide walk on Saturday or Sunday, etc. And while that is good, I do not consider that our free time necessarily has to be with other people. It's okay to be alone sometimes. Being alone is not the same as being lonely. Being alone is not synonymous with depression. In what follows, I want to show just a little of what science has known about telepathy. And with this, I want to awaken your curiosity and perhaps we begin to observe ourselves more and see our potentials beyond what we are told and go from that thought to choosing to develop what is good for us according to our own perception and not from what is dictated in current educational institutions. It is good to develop our potentials, the good potentials we have, and we have many more than what we are told on a daily basis. We all know that a baby should be able to walk between 12 and 15 months, and that voluntary sphincter control begins at 15 to 18 months of age, and the age at which it is established is between 18 months and 3 years. Most babies say their first word sometimes between 12 and 18 months of age. If the child does not do one or more of these things, the alarms go off. If it is not the parents, it will be the daycare staff or the doctor during periodic checkups. And that is very good, but no one focuses on other capabilities that will make us self-sufficient. Who would need a mobile phone if we knew how to communicate remotely? What would happen if this is a capacity that begins to develop at 3 months, to give an example? And by the age of 8, you can already, for those who develop them, have a conversation at a distance, not just send an idea. In the particular case of this ability, at least 2 participants are required. It is, of course, more complex than learning to speak, but I am convinced that this is not so difficult if we have a guide to learn that. In any case, telepathy occurs daily. It occurs more frequently among close people, family members, or close friends, but it occurs even among distant people who have not met before in life as we know it. I found information about it a long time ago, but now I can access it because it was a book that talks about it and presents studies and evidence, but I don't remember the name or the author, and it doesn't matter because now it's enough for me what we find with a quickly Google search to demonstrate that science and its current dogmas accept the existence of telepathy as a human capacity. For a long time ago, it has been assumed that telepathy is not real and that those who claim to be capable of reading other people's minds or communicating with another person telepathically were mentally ill. So there have been many studies to check if telepathy is real, but those who test people were not convinced with the result most of the time, at least officially. It was in such a way that those who test were mostly psychiatrist patients. Those studies were done in psychiatric hospitals. This study, for instance, is from the year 1977, Telepathy in Mental Illness. Deluge or delusion. The belief that one can read others' minds has long been considered a symptom of psychosis. Despite reports of the parapsychological literature of heretical telepathy, all patients admitted to an inpatient psychiatric unit were screened for paranormal beliefs, and those claiming telepathy's abilities were tested in free response ESP task or free response of extrasensory perception or sixth sense, that is, the information obtained through another resource beyond the five recognized physical senses. 18% of the inpatient population claimed telepathy abilities. Of the 9 patients who complete the task, none perform above chance's expectations. Higher frequencies of paranormal experiences than those reported previously in the psychiatric literature were attributed to the context of the study. Schneider's first-rank symptoms and a belief in telepathy discriminate schizophrenics more reliably than other paranormal experiences. Possible psychodynamics of delusions of telepathy were discussed in view of the predominance of women and younger men reporting them, as were the possible effects of such research of patients' delusions. The study recalled what different psychiatrists theorized regarding telepathy. Crippling, in defining the disease he called dementia precoce, described as one of the more characteristic features of this condition the feeling that the patient knows thoughts of other people. Miller considered the feeling of thoughts being heard and transmits to be almost pathognomonic in schizophrenics. Freud suggested that psychic regression might lead not only to the belief in extrasensory perception, but to the actual experience of it. He hypothesized that telepathy might have been a primitive means of communication replaced by sensory signals in the course of evolution, but still available to persons regressed to pre-verbal states. Interesting. In the end, it says each of the 9 patients who did complete the study and each of their therapists were interviewed at the time of discharge from the hospital in regard of the effects of the study on patients' beliefs in his telepathic abilities, on his presenting symptoms, and on the course of his therapy. One patient credited that the study with a therapeutic influence on his ability to test reality. His therapist independently stated that the patient's delusional system began to weaken during his participation in the study. I wonder why. None of the other 8 patients or therapists report any effect, positive or negative, on the patient's telepathic claims, illness, or treatment. There were thus no evidence that an investigation of their erroneous beliefs in telepathy encouraged their psychiatric symptoms. It is possible, however, that those patients vulnerable to such influence exclude themselves from the study by their refusal to participate. You don't say. There are a lot of studies like this which end with the same time of conclusion, generally studies from a few or several decades ago. The CIA has experimented since a long time ago with telepathy, remote viewing, and other paranormal abilities that, in theory, might be real. There are declassified files on that. See the video description. I leave a few links on what I mentioned here in the description of this video so you can read it. As you can see, these studies have shown some results in favor of the belief that human capacity for distant communication exists. On the other hand, when a group of people are asked to participate in these studies, they are given tasks to do. I don't think they are good process to speak for or against telepathy, especially the latter. Because as we know telepathy, as we understand it, born from oneself, it is not easy to do what another wants. It's like wanting to demonstrate that we can communicate with speech, but giving ourselves as our assessment to express ourselves in other language. If beings other than us wanted to see the possibility of communication between humans, and to do so, they put a Mandarin speaker with a Spanish speaker. The results of the study will be that humans are not able to communicate verbally with each other. You see where I'm going? A study cannot be done to see the authenticity of telepathy by giving instructions to the participants, but rather by observing their communication. Furthermore, people who are more sensitive to telepathy are also the center of mockery on many occasions. The people around them, unintentionally, I suppose, because I had done it myself unintentionally, take it for granted that what they experience as telepathic communication is an error of interpretation of them. Giving a positive comment in favor of their experiences with telepathic communication, the people around do not get involved. Perhaps they laugh and continue with their things. Then the people must relate to this activity, telepathic communication, exclude themselves from participating in experiments in this regard. But now the new studies do not call into question the veracity of telepathic communication. That is already accepted. New studies are being done to understand the mechanism behind telepathic communication. Look at the following: investigating paranormal phenomena, functional brain imaging of telepathy. Telepathy is defined as the communication of impressions of any kind from one mind to another, independently of the recognized channels of sense. Meta-analysis of Gansfeld's studies, as well as car-guessing task studies, provide compelling evidence for the existence of telepathic phenomena. The aim of this study is to elucidate the neural basis of telepathy by examining an individual with this special ability. Materials and methods. Using functional MRI, we examined a famous mentalist while he was performing a telepathic task in a 1.5T scanner. A match control subject without this special ability was also examined under similar conditions. Results. The mentalist demonstrates significant activation of the right parahippocampal gyrus after successful performance of a telepathic task. The comparison subject, who did not show any telepathic ability, demonstrates significant activation of the left inferior frontal gyrus. Conclusions. The findings of this study are suggestive of a limbic basis for telepathy and warrant further systematic research. Here I found this link about Gansel's effect, but there are many others. If you can see, your brain uses visual impact to make sense of the world. To create the Gansel's effect, you have to deprive your brain of the information it needs to perform this task. With no incoming signals, your perception of brightness slowly decreases. This is called a fade out. As retinal cells become more active, your mind starts to see the blood vessels in your eyes. In a few minutes, things might turn gray. Then you might see zigzag lines, dots, or a blood of color. The full effect usually takes 5 to 7 minutes. Longer exposure may produce stranger results. Your brain is frantically seeking outside stimuli. Finding none, the higher visual cortex starts amplifying available information, generating visual and auditory hallucinations. It's similar to what would happen if you were lost in a blinding snowstorm, seeing nothing but a wall of white. Practical uses of Gansel's effect. The Gansel's effect came to public attention when it was used to research extrasensory perceptions. In telepathy experiments, one person acts as the receiver and it's exposed to white noise and a homogeneous red light. Another person, the sensor, attempts to relay information to the receiver. With mixed results, these investigations are controversial and have been fiercely debated. The Ganselt effect has also been used to research hallucinations. It has provided information on how our senses, especially vision, function to detect change. Some people look at it as a way to induce visual phenomena and hallucinations without taking dangerous drugs. Some use it as a form of deep meditation. For most people, it has no practical use, but it can help satisfy your curiosity about how the human mind functions. Then this other study goes brain to brain communication, the possible role of brain electromagnetic fields as a potential hypothesis. Up now, the communication between brains of different humans or animals has been confirmed and confined by the sensory medium and motor facilities of body. This study is not limited to humans. Recently, direct brain-to-brain communication outside the conventional five senses has been verified between animals and humans. Nevertheless, no empirical studies or serious discussions have been performed to elucidate the mechanisms behind this process. The validation of brain to brain communication has been documented via recording similar patterns of action potentials occurring in the brain cortex of two animals. With regard to action potentials in brain neurons, the magnetic field resulting from the action potentials created in neurons is one of the tools where the brain of one animal can affect the brain of another. It has been shown that different animals, even humans, have the power to understand the magnetic field. Cryptochrome, which exists in the retina and in different regions of the brain, has been confirmed to be able to perceive magnetic fields and convert magnetic fields to action potentials. Recently, iron particles, which they call Fe3O4, believed to be functioning as magnets, have been found in various parts of the brain and are postulated as magnetic field receptors. Newly developed supersensitive magnetic sensors made in iron magnets that can sense the brain's magnetic fields had suggested the idea that these Fe3O4 particles or magnets may be capable of receiving the brain's extremely weak magnetic field. The present studies suggest that it is possible the extremely weak magnetic field in one animal's brain to transmit vital and accurate information to another animal's brain. It may be hypothesized that large synchronized outflows of cortex neurons in the frontal lobe, an area extremely involved in social cognition in a wide variety of mammalian species, from rodents to primates, produces electromagnetic fields around the brain. This field may be able to influence cortical neurons in the frontal lobe of another brain by inducing action potentials in large groups of neurons, which can transmit information such as different emotions and cognition cues to the other brain. A possible confirmation of this phenomenon is seen in two studies carried out, one in rats in the year 2013 and one in Egyptian fruit bats in the year 2019. In both studies, action potentials were recorded in the frontal cortices of two rats or bats close to each other. Interestingly, after starting action potentials in animal 1 as the encoder, the same action potential with the similar patterns immediately appeared in the frontal cortex of animal 2 as the decoder. In the case of the rat study, the decoder rat also performed the same action as the first encoder rat. The potential role of brain magnetic particles, magnetites, may be effective in perceiving another brain's magnetic field. It might be of significant interest in upcoming research to clarify the role of brain magnetic particles in brain-to-brain communication. The ubiquitous cryptochrome, a crucial receiver of the magnetic field, should be examined, and its potential role in direct brain-to-brain communication might be elucidated by some fundamental research. The present studies suggest that it is possible the extremely weak magnetic field of animals' brain could transmit vital and accurate information to another animal's brain. Interesting, right? All this. Here I leave you these studies with these reflections, and I invite you to leave me your reflection and comments below. Be well.